This video contains the solutions to take-home problems number 12. Today was all about factoring, and the first thing we want to think about when we're factoring is to factor out the greatest common factor. And in this case, we're looking at the coefficients and trying to find common factors, in this case between 18 and 9, and we're also looking at the variables, trying to find common factors between x to the fifth and x cubed. So you can do these both in one step, but if you're still struggling with factoring, I want to do it a little bit more carefully, we can do it in two steps. So we'll start with the coefficients, and between 18 and 9, the common factor is going to be 9. So now when I factor out the 9, what I'm doing is I'm dividing everything that's left by 9. 18 divided by 9 is 2. I didn't touch the x's. And then 9 divided by 9 is 1. So I just get 1 x cubed, or just x cubed. Now we'll look at the x's. So to see what the common factor between the x's is, I'm going to look at the exponents. So x to the fifth means x times x times x times x. X multiplied by itself 5 times. And x cubed means x times x times x, x multiplied by itself 3 times. So the common factor there would be x to the third. 3 x's is what they have in common. And so when I factor that out, I get 9, the 9 is still there, and then I get x cubed. Now when I take out those 3 x's, what's left is 2 x's, so x squared. And when I take out these 3 x's, what's left is x cubed divided by x cubed, which is 1. Really common mistake to forget to put that 1 there, so watch out for that. But that's how we would factor our expression. Now we've got a trinomial, so we've got x squared plus 9x minus 22. Because the coefficient of x squared is 1, we know that when we factor this, we're going to get 2 binomials, both starting with x. And now the numbers that we're looking for here, the product of these two numbers should be 22, and because the c value is negative, because we have this minus sign, the difference between those two factors should be 9. So what we want to put here is two numbers whose product is 22 and whose difference is 9. And it's not too hard to think about. There's not too many ways to multiply and get 22, so the numbers that we want are 11 and 2. And the difference between 11 and 2 is 9. Now one of those is going to get a plus sign, and one of those is going to get a minus sign. How do we decide which is which? Well, now we look at the sign on the 9. Because we have positive 9, we want the bigger number to be positive. So that means we want plus 11 and minus 2. And just to check, the sum of those two numbers, 11 plus negative 2, is positive 9. And remember, we can always check any factoring problem by multiplying it back out, and we can check this and see that this really is our correct answer. Here we have another trinomial, but the first thing we'll have to do is factor out the greatest common factor. Now again, we're looking at this in two stages. We're looking at common factors among the coefficients, and then we're also looking at common factors among the variables. So among the coefficients, 4, 4, and 24, the common factor is going to be 4. And then among my variables, again looking at the exponents, x to the fourth, x cubed, and x squared, the lowest power there is x squared, so that's what I'll factor out as well. When I factor out 4x squared from 4x to the fourth, I get x squared. When I factor out 4x squared from 4x cubed, I get x. And when I factor out 4x squared from 24x squared, I get 6. Again, I'm just dividing there. And now we need to factor x squared minus x minus 6. So again, my c value is negative, so that means I want two numbers that multiply together to be 6 and whose difference is 1. Again, I've got a 1 here that I'm thinking about. So two numbers, when I multiply them together, I get 6, and when I subtract them, I get 1. Those numbers are 2 and 3. Now again, one of those is going to be positive, one of those is going to be negative. So which one's which? Well, my coefficient is negative 1, and that means that I want the bigger number to be negative, which means negative 3 and positive 2. And again, just to check, if I add those two numbers, plus 2 and minus 3 added together is negative 1, so that checks out. So there's my factored polynomial. Here we have a difference of two squares. We can tell that these are squares because 25 is a square, 36 is a square, and the powers are even. So a to the fourth is a square because that's a squared squared, and 25 is 5 squared. 36 is 6 squared, and b squared is, of course, b squared. So that means that this is 5a squared squared minus 6b squared. And the way we factor a difference of two squares is we take the two things that have been squared, subtract them, and then also add them. So 5a squared minus 6b and 5a squared plus 6b is our factored answer. Here we have a sum of two cubes, so the coefficient of u to the 6th here, 8, that's 2 cubed. And u to the 6th, because that power is divisible by 3, that's a cube, that's u squared cubed. The coefficient of v cubed is 1, so we can think of that as 1 cubed. And v cubed is, of course, v cubed. So this expression is 2u squared cubed plus v cubed. And the way we factor a sum of two cubes is we take the two things that have been cubed and add them. And then we have the first thing squared, so 2u squared squared. We have minus the product of the two things, 2u squared times v, and then plus the second thing squared. Now we can simplify that second set of parentheses. That's going to be 2u squared plus v. 2u squared squared is 4u to the 4th, minus 2u squared v plus v squared, and that is our factored answer.